Welcome to the Talent Development Hot Seat. I'm your host, Andy Storch, and I'm excited that you're joining me today for another great episode and conversation to help you up your game and improve your capabilities in the world of talent development. And today, I've got a really great one for you because we're going to be talking about improving the effectiveness of your training and development programs. We're talking about change management. We're talking about collaboration, interaction, and the skills that your leaders have and need to be more effective inside your organizations. My guest today is Eric Nielsen, who is the founder and CEO of YUI Consulting, a firm specializing in organizational development and leadership transformation, which he founded after 17 years in operational and training roles at Verizon. Eric has over 20 years of experience working with Fortune 500 companies and has established himself as a thought leader in creating high-performance cultures and developing effective leadership strategies. He has a master's in management leadership and has worked with several different companies around the US and the world. And I'm really excited to dig in to his experience today. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Andy. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you here. So I always like to start with a little bit of background, and then we are going to really dig into this topic of how you think about training programs and making them more effective. But tell me a little bit about your background and how did you get into this space in the beginning?
Absolutely. So like I said, I'm the founder of YUI Consulting, and it's my personal passion and mission to help companies find and unlock the performance that's just sitting on the table. They probably aren't even aware that it's there because they think, hey, everything's great right now. And transforming how employees communicate, how they achieve their goals, the project management, and other approaches, and how they grow their employees. Like you said, my background spans almost 2 decades of business transformation, strategic planning, consulting, employee development, operations, training, AI development, and leading teams in Fortune's top 25. And then beyond my college credentials, educational credentials, I'm also a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt. So I enjoy helping to certify and coach others. A PMP, project management professional, and also trained in agile design thinking and multiple different motivation methodologies. Love helping people grow, improving processes. I enjoy teaching all kinds of things, not just this. I'm also a technical scuba instructor, and I created YUI Consulting to just greatly improve, people's businesses, processes, and just make success that much easier by just having those aha moments.
I love it, and it's clear. Like with many people I know in the talent development, training and development space, that you like to practice what you preach. You're not just all about training and development for other people. You've obviously invested a lot in your own development over the years in various areas, project management, like you said, Sigma and Six Sigma and scuba training as well. So this will be fun to get into. I'm curious, as you're working with companies now, especially in the talent development space, what do you see as kind of the biggest trends in talent development right now? This is something that, there's lots of things changing in the space, lots of things changing in how people are approaching training development, how companies are operating. AI is certainly changing lots of things. What are a couple of the trends or changes that you've noticed in the space recently?
Yeah, so there's been trends, about trying to get, instead of just teaching employees, hey, here's something I want you to learn. Okay, go practice it or do it. It is what they call it, experiential learning. And really it's that we all learn in our own ways. And so let me kind of give this to you and have you incorporate it and adopt it yourself. And that is a nice step forward. There's still some opportunities with that one because then you have a rather kind of abstract idea being interpreted through multiple different lenses, and that can go different ways. And so you kind of have to, herd the cats afterwards. But it definitely does help to personalize the experience a little more. And that by itself is a good pillar of better successful training, and something that I incorporate is getting people to have those better and deeper understandings through their own skill set and put it into the, the experience of their lives, the framework of their lives, so that they can apply it more effectively when it matters.
Yeah. A lot of organizations are investing heavily in training and development right now. Not all of them, but many still are. Yet the results seem to maybe fade after a few months because they didn't really do anything to reinforce that training. What do you think is the reason for this, or why do you think most training doesn't work very well?
That's a real big question. There's some concerns from a lot of leaders that training isn't all it's cracked up to be, and because it's how it's used. So a lot of companies see a big drop off in training effectiveness after about 3 to 4 months. And that's generally caused by either the training wasn't adequately targeting what it needed to target, or didn't include what it needed to include for people to get really buy in and make it part of their daily life, or it wasn't built into the ongoing training and coaching culture of that company. And so it's just one of those, hey, that was cool today, but 2 weeks from now, wait, what was that training again? And it just seems to kind of slip, which then turns into what I like to call a whack-a-mole training experience. Old game where you're just trying to hit every single thing that pops up. Here's the flavor of the month. And people try to balance things as best they can that way. And really, if you have solid training that addresses the main root causes of the problems of your company, it will stick. And if you build it in a way, and we can talk about this later, that employees don't just hear, they love, they run to it, and it helps to kind of retain within the company as well. So it's a culture aspect.
I think when I hear that, our listeners are primarily working talent development, training and development. So we're always trying to figure out how to create better, more effective programs, certainly that people are excited about. It still might be surprising to some to hear you say that they run towards it. So when you're thinking about putting a new training program together, maybe because someone requested it, maybe because you see a need, where do you start? How do you think about creating that or building that so that it is effective and it is learning that sticks rather than just something people pop into and then forget about?
That's a great question. So when you're building a training that you really, really want to stick and you want it to perform well, there's many, many different things you have to keep in mind. And that's part of what differentiates YUI Consulting, is that instead of just saying, hey, we have training experience, looked into the science behind why it works, and then tested those models out so that we basically have a recipe and say, okay, if you put in these ingredients into this training design, it will work. It will not even be a question. It will work fantastically. And the results we've seen are typically, 2-3 times, even up to 10 sometimes, 10 times what the companies have previously seen before. And so when we're doing that, you really have to take into account what are the driving root causes, or the root causes that are driving the opportunity in the first place. And a lot of people say, okay, their behavior is not what I want it to be. Let's change the behavior. Well, why is the behavior that way? Maybe there's, the actions they're taking. Okay, well, why are the actions that way? Okay, there's a mindset behind that. Are you getting down to that level to truly change the person at the core? And once you do that, everything else after it is much, much easier.
I believe that. Now, I mentioned a lot of organizations are investing heavily in training. If we're honest and we look around the landscape right now in toward the end of 2025, there are a lot of organizations that are not investing very much in training and development at all right now. They're trying to figure out what's going on with the economy, shifting their focus to AI, whatever the reason is. There's definitely been some cutbacks in training and development. And I'm curious, what do you see as the risks here? What happens when companies are not investing in training, especially during these uncertain times?
Yeah, so right now there's a lot of shifts in the business. We've seen tons of examples where AI have started to take over, and people are very worried about it. And for many reasons, the AI is going to be very helpful, not only to supplement and to enhance what the humans are able to do, but it'll also take off a lot of the workload of tedious things. But as companies are investing in that, they have to remember that there's a long ways to go with it still, and not to dive into it to the point where you realize, hey, we went too far. Now things are worse in this direction. And there's certain things that, and knowing where the AI works best and where the humans work best and where they collaborate. For example, even with AI bots, talking to people and trying to help them through processes, if you've ever experienced that, they can be really robotic, very awkward, and just not pleasant. Yeah, you can get through it, and it's an automated system, but did you actually enjoy the experience? And that's something that, you can actually use the same training methodology to train the AI to make it a much more personable, human and enjoyable experience. You can improve the human investment so that when things go south so far that you really need to have that person, or you want to have that, boutique or better experience, where you're dealing with someone, face to face or over the phone or online, that experience is not just effective, it is a wow, encounter. And there's a huge gap that I don't think a lot of companies realize in what that's like. Like if you ever called a customer service organization at all, typically there's mountains of horror stories and very few shining star moments, and it's really, really easy to fix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know there was a movement for a moment where customer service organizations were saying, "Oh, we're going to have AI take over all of this," and then I feel like I've read there's been a big pushback to say, "No, AI is not ready at all," and a lot of people still want that human interaction. But the problem is, you could still be paying humans to be in customer service, which I hope many companies will continue to do. But if they don't have the right training, then they're still not going to be very helpful or effective, or as helpful or effective for customers as they can be, right?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, when I was teaching the ADEPT program with large companies, thousands of employees, they would come back to me and say, why wasn't I taught this from day one? Every single person needs this, or this is the best training I have ever had. And this is at a company that was basically one of the top training companies in America across all industries. And they were saying, this is the best training I ever had. And now I understand why I hit the wall or the barrier or, conflict with, people in the past, and not just at work, but also my personal life. And so everything that I do, not only do I refuse to deliver anything that doesn't create a wow experience, save a company millions, improve the processes, that kind of stuff. But really, I want people to walk away from it and to say, if I didn't, go through this, I would be in a much worse situation the entire rest of my career or my life. And that's the big warm fuzzies that I'm after.
Yeah, that's really interesting because you're approaching it with a holistic perspective, connecting work life back to personal life, because it all goes into our well-being and our happiness.
Yep.
I want to get to your ADEPT program, the framework that you've created, because I think it sounds like you've gotten some really great results for it. I think it'd be interesting for our listeners. I want to talk about leadership and change management as well before we get there. Many leaders assume that their team's skills, soft skills, power skills, whatever you want to call them, non-technical skills are, quote, good enough. But from your perspective, how big do you think is the gap of what leaders think and what's really happening on the ground?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I mean, it's great that companies try to, set their employees up for success with, soft skills training, or various different approaches. But what they really don't understand is that what's being taught today is really that elementary basic level stuff. And it comes across so generic that a lot of employees just don't buy into it. They don't, retain it, and they definitely don't use it under pressure because it just seems too cookie cutter-ish. And so when you have employees that are taught something that actually really works, and during training, they're like, holy cow, this is night and day different. I sound totally different. This sounds so much better. I believe this. Then they tend to really, adopt it more. There's a huge cost on the table that companies don't realize, where it's not just the time spent with the customers, the escalations that are avoided, the cost from having to go back and talk to customers again and again and again to finally fix something, but it's the loyalty, the branding, how well customers are willing to invest, whether it's healthcare patients, retail customers, that kind of stuff. So what I've found through my personal research is that typically when things go south, it costs companies 10 times more, sometimes even more than that, but on average about 10 times more than what the original interaction was expected to cost them. And so what I do just cleans all that up.
Yeah. And a lot of it comes down to the skills of the team to be able to handle some of these challenges, interactions, and really be able to collaborate effectively and work effectively as a team, right? So they're not just sitting in silos, and they're communicating effectively. These are really some of the most important issues, I think, that are coming up for so many companies and so many teams now, is can people communicate and collaborate effectively to work well together as a team, especially if they're hybrid or remote or whatever it is. The setup could be different for every organization, but it's those human elements, those human skills that become more and more important as time goes on.
Absolutely. And that's why I never want to provide anything that is, very targeted or overly targeted to one particular group, unless it's, needed for just that specific group. But I try to approach problem solving and training from addressing the issue at a core level that all people, all AI bots, respond to, or that matters for, makes a difference. So that way it doesn't matter necessarily the context. It is the fundamental, like I said, the mindset that kind of holds people back from the success that they could have.
Absolutely. Let's talk about change management. Everyone seems to be going through some type of change, whether it be a change in executive, whether it be C-suite changes, leadership changes, strategy changes, certainly technology changes. There's a lot of change going on. What do most organizations, do you think, get wrong about change, and what's the right way to go about it?
That's a great question, and one I'm really, really passionate about. So this might be a controversial take on it, but I personally think the traditional change management process it's flawed. It's broken. It's missing something from the very, very foundation. It's kind of funny that when you look at the traditional change management process, it very closely mirrors the stages of grief. And that's because most people don't like going through it. And so it's not, and the executive response is typically, oh, it's just, people resist change, or they like to stay put where they're at. And to some degree, yes. But, and I'll give a great analogy here in a second, employees really don't resist change. They resist bad solutions. And what a lot of leaders don't realize is that their solution has a lot to be desired. Here's an analogy. If I tell you I need you to hammer nails into a piece of wood, and I come back and you are using your fist to the best of your capability, and it's just taking you forever and a day to do that, and I say, hey, look, check this out. Here's a hammer. Here's how it works. Here's the benefit behind it. Do you really think I'm going to have to manage that change with those employees? Or they can say, oh, give me the hammer right now, and they will run to that solution.
Right.
That is a good solution, one that you don't have to manage that change. And adoption happens. And this is how kind of a little self-check that I do with everything that I produce. People will run to it if the solution is either easier, quicker, or more successful than what they were doing before. And ideally, more than one of those at the same time. But that's how you manage change.
And when I think about the major organizational changes going on, most of them, it's not obvious right away what the benefits are to the individuals. They create a lot of uncertainty. They create at least the perception that there's going to be more work, or it's going to be hard, or there's going to be a learning curve. And those are the things that people often resist, right?
That's the whole reason why people are trying to get into AI right now, is because we're trying to simplify things, improve things, make things easier for the company. But you can do it at the human level too, as well as improve the AI. And like I said, the quicker, easier, more successful the same amount of work is, the more people will run to the training and retain it even on their own, much less the company having to push them to do it.
Well, and then there's also the communication challenge as well, right? You and I have both seen over the years, the C-suite makes a decision about a strategy, and they either send an email or they put a PowerPoint together and they give a presentation at a town hall and just expect everybody's going to line up behind it. It just doesn't really work that way. It doesn't really stick for a lot of people, or they have a lot of questions and they're not really addressed by the middle layer, the middle managers, and it just creates even more confusion.
I totally agree. In fact, one thing when I was in my Lean Six Sigma studies, that really surprised me was that on average, different people are different, but on average, 80% of executive-led decisions fail to some degree, sometimes entirely, sometimes they just fail to meet the performance goals because they are not data-driven. So that was really, really insightful. It sounds great on paper, sounds great as an idea, but it wasn't well researched ahead of time. And I'm a big advocate for verifying the root cause of the issues, whether it's a personal level because training needs to address, or the way that we handle project management, employee development, hiring, everything. And it's funny you mentioned PowerPoints and presentations, because I had a very, very meaningful lesson years and years ago that I like to call the $2 million PowerPoint. And the story behind this, real briefly, is that I was working on a project that was going to roll out, it was going to expand the scale and scope of what we were currently doing as a company.
Mm-hmm.
And there was going to be a big review, and an executive was supposed to join us. And so I was basically told to put everything on hold and really, really focus on honing this presentation so that we can, maintain that buy-in, which we already had. And so by working tirelessly on this presentation to make it as best as it could be, the work had to be put off, and I was actually, instructed to do that. And so because the rollout or the scaling of this was delayed, this PowerPoint actually cost the company $2 million. And so that's why I call it my $2 million PowerPoint. And that was just a lesson for myself. It's, many organizations either, over-polish a strategy, and people often say, analysis paralysis,
Mm-hmm.
or they delay the launch, missing millions of opportunity. Other companies launch too quickly, trying to avoid the analysis paralysis, and they don't validate, is this really going to solve what's causing the problem, the real root cause, the root cause of the root cause of the root cause, which basically either creates a lot of expensive rework, or they get a fraction of what they could have achieved.
I've also heard you say that organizations are too focused on deliverables instead of outcomes. What do you mean by that?
So especially during project management and training curriculum development, they focus on, okay, what do we need to do? We need to deliver this, teach them this. We need these steps along the way. Talk to this person, talk to that person, and it's very much trying to find your way from one destination to another by looking straight down right in front of you, or maybe just a little further ahead. And you really have to say, where is it we want to be? What's that final goal? And then what are the steps that get there? But a lot of companies, as they look at those steps in front of them, they forget to keep on looking ahead, and they say, okay, yeah, these steps, okay, these go in order. This is the right sequence. But they don't realize that sequence is kind of veering off from where their vision originally was. And you occasionally have to kind of jump back and forth and say, are these steps veering off, or are they staying on course? And so it's more important. That's one thing that I do is, I don't say, hey, look, I trained you, or I spent so many hours, or, I taught this stuff to you. It is the outcome of what we wanted to see happening. And is it not just what we expected? Is it far beyond that, wildly beyond what we thought was possible? And that is my base level of where I start my training and solutions at.
Speaking of the training, we were talking earlier about what makes effective training and how to make sure it sticks. And one of the things you mentioned was getting beyond just knowledge transfer. That, you say a lot of training focuses on knowledge transfer and practice. And I'm definitely guilty of this, especially as a keynote speaker. I'm trying to communicate an idea, communicate knowledge. Of course, I want to ask questions and get people to come to some realizations. I'd love to make it a little more experiential when I can. What else needs to happen for real behavior change to occur?
Yeah, so we talked about some of the opportunities that are really out there, but really to build these solutions, I don't want to give away too much of the secret sauce, the magic formula or anything. But there are some important things that people need to realize, and that there needs to be some massive aha moments along the way, and those paradigm shifts, getting people to just kind of rethink the way they approach things in a way that is drastic enough to prompt them to want them to change. Those big aha moments, like I said earlier, if I hadn't attended this, I'd be behind in life, or work, or just things would be harder. And those big aha moments create urgency and lasting adoption. And then, as far as the design principles for the curriculum itself, the solutions have to be intuitive. They have to be concrete. Something that's very, very easy to understand and intuitive in a way that it works under pressure, not just in the classroom, even under the toughest situations. And they don't have to use resources to go back and say, how did that work again? Because in the moment, that's too late. So it needs to be. That's a really, really big challenge. Can it be effective enough that it helps pretty much across the board in any situation, but intuitive enough that it's easy to apply on the go whenever?
Yeah.
And then some personal flavor I like to add in there are the emotional anchors. I try to have, positive, humorous, and even, somber or negative moments in each of the training courses, because those emotional moments will make it stick in our minds. It's a fun part of psychology. And then also we need, as a training industry, build in more checks along the way to make sure that it's working in the moment and that it's working after the fact in the real world. And not just for the training itself, but teach the employees or participants how to self-check to make sure that they are delivering it the way that it should be, so they don't have to wait until the end of the week and they get that coaching from their leader.
Yeah. You also mentioned earlier when we were talking about effective training, the importance of really focusing in on what's the most important issue, the root cause, if you will, because if you're truly solving a problem that employees have, then they're going to run towards that. What's an example of a root cause that maybe you've uncovered that's made a difference in some training?
Two real quick stories, and I'll try to make these concise. The first one is there was a company who was really just having a headache and spending tons of money trying to constantly get employees into training courses because they're being distracted by whatever they were doing with their job. And we were able to, they were hoping to eliminate that by 25, 30%, somewhere in there. And when I really coached the project management group on how to identify the root causes behind this, we were actually able to 100% eliminate every reschedule. And a lot of it was just leaders' understanding of what to do with the time with their employees proactively versus reactively. And the businesses couldn't even believe that was even possible. They were trying to get a quarter rig on, much less, all of it. And so really it's questioning your assumptions and asking yourself, is this really the problem I need to address, or is there something deeper than that? For example, there was, second example, another team I worked with, this is one of my proudest moments, where they were trying to change employee behavior on, XYZ. It was, how they worked with customers on a priority they had at the time. And they said, we're going to improve this just by pushing harder on it. And I said, well, have you been pushing in the past? And they said, yes. And I said, well, why didn't it work the first time? And they said, well, we're going to do it harder this time. Well, let's take a look at that. And so I had them really dive into personal conversations with the front lines and ask them why it was and wasn't, where it wasn't working. And they came back and they said that, we didn't realize that the employees felt like they had no control over it, and it was just toss it out there and it's at the whim of the people they're talking to. And we don't even know how they show up to work every single day feeling like they cannot make a difference. And that was really, really humbling and sombering for them. And so then we worked through, how to change that, how to change the mindset, the behaviors, the results. And they saw the biggest improvement the company has ever seen in the shortest amount of time that was possible. And the employees ran to it once they saw, what it could be.
Right. That's amazing. I want to dig into some of your training and your framework. You mentioned the ADEPT training and framework earlier. What makes your ADEPT framework different from other soft skills or human skill training programs, and what goes into that?
Yeah, so ADEPT is one of my proudest programs that I offer. It stands for Advanced. That's the Advanced De-Escalations and Positioning Techniques. And advanced is really the key word, because like I said earlier, companies invest in, soft skills and other training programs, but it's really much more at a basic elementary level than they believe it is. And so these advanced skills have shown repeatedly and consistently to outperform the company's expectations by 2 to 3 times, sometimes even as much as 10 in certain metrics. And whether it's, resolving the situation the first time, reducing the escalations, or, customers or families working with, healthcare workers just really get upset. The customer satisfaction scores, NPS scores, internal and customer turnover, and churn, revenue, cost savings, all of that. And it takes the abstract ideas that are often missed because they're so complex, and it turns them into those concrete, intuitive solutions. And it presents it in a way that people just scramble to write down what's happening, because they are like, these aha moments are like, that's why I ran into those problems, and now I know how to fix it. And they run to it, just like the hammer analogy I said earlier. And it's been really, really just amazing experiences to watch these people transform and change. I've got a lot of, great verbatims that come from it, and just, watching that happen. And the best part is that, when you have something that works because you understand the recipe behind it, you can do what YUI Consulting does, which I don't think any other consulting company offers, and that is guarantee the work. That if it doesn't work, hypothetically, it's never happened. That you don't owe YUI a thing. And that's a level of confidence that you just don't see in other consulting companies.
That is a big level of confidence, and something very unique in the training and development space. I really have not seen very many companies offer a guarantee, other than they guarantee they'll show up and do the thing they said they'll do, but not guaranteeing results. So I'm curious because when you and I talked a few weeks ago, you were talking a lot about the results that you've been seeing, which I was really impressed with. And a big reason why I wanted to have you on the show today. What type of results are you seeing? And more importantly, how are you measuring this impact so that it is having an effect and they are getting their money's worth, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, so I really try to partner with the operations department, because it's one thing to say, yeah, we can see a qualitative change, but when you can quantify that just makes you feel even better. You can say, yes. So historically, those escalation moments, where customers just blow up, or patients, blow up, those are cut in half overnight. And the cost behind that is staggering, or the cost savings, I guess. Typically the amount of repeat contacts, or, the issue not being resolved the first time, that's improved by at least 10%. The quality scores are usually going up by about 7-10% as well. And one of my personal ones, my personal favorites, is that, and really, really surprising one that I didn't think was going to change, but I was shocked was, and now I track it, is the employee engagement, that employee absences from the pilot groups and the training groups compared to the control groups. The employee absences were 28% less than the control groups on average. They showed up to work. They were much more engaged. And when I asked them later on in surveys and personal one-on-one conversations, they said it's because my job no longer sucks.
Huh. Wow. Bold.
Yeah. And they just, they enjoyed a lot more. Employees don't come into work hoping to have a horrible day, or hoping not to be successful. Right. And so when you show them that they can be much more successful, more easily, more happily, they will run to it. And it's amazing to watch. In fact, one of the associate directors I worked with in the past, I loved what she said. She said, I love sitting in the adept class and watching as the representatives have this awakening and realize how to talk to the customers. They're finally getting it. They love it. And they sound so much better. This is the way that soft skills should be taught.
Yeah. So you're measuring impact. I imagine getting agreement ahead of time on what exactly you're going to measure, what the baseline is, measuring that impact.
Metrics is. Yeah.
Okay. And also having conversations to follow up with people about the impact of the program. I'm curious, we've been talking about what you've discovered about creating great training programs. I hope that people listening will reach out to you about some of the work that you do, but we also have a lot of listeners in talent development. If they're obviously putting their own programs together, what questions do you recommend leaders and talent development professionals be asking to make the most of training, or make it the most effective it can be?
If you have to ask if your training is going to be successful, or if it's time to do training, you may want to rethink how you approach it. Training should be something that when you start applying it, the leaders ask you, how quickly can we scale this? An example is with the adept training, for example, once the pilot teams typically go through it, I give companies fair warning that the other teams that see it or are next to those teams, they will start fighting over if they can get in next. And true story. It's really, really happy to see, but they're like, what did you do? What did you change? I need this too. And they were fighting over and saying, I will give you my, team training time, my team meeting times, get me in this course because it's so successful. And if you can achieve that level of engagement, where people say, can you please do this with everyone who's getting hired behind me because they need to have it too? Or why didn't I get this from day one? That's when you know you're on the right track. And knowing those checks and balances of, is this steering towards our vision? Is this going to be achieving the results we're looking for? Being focused on the outcome versus the steps you think you need to get to the outcome. All those things are very important, critical core, pillars for all the buzzwords in there. To make sure this is successful. It's the honest truth.
Yeah. Speaking of honest truth, if you had to give leaders, talent development professionals, L&D listening today, one piece of tough advice about their training strategy and how they put these things together, what would it be?
All right. I'm going to throw the gauntlet out there and challenge a lot of other companies. I'm going to say kind of what I mentioned earlier. If training companies, if consulting firms, no matter what it's about, if they're not willing to guarantee what they do, what's the point? Training without accountability is just theater. And it's a bold statement, I think, but that's where the industry needs to go. If you really want what you do to be valued, stand behind it. And that's what I do every single time. I refuse to deliver anything that does not create a wow experience for the business and for the participants. Stop measuring training in hours or completions. Look at the outcome. Did it achieve what you wanted? Great. Let's make it achieve more. And then I guess that's more than one. But yeah, I'm very passionate about it. And really, they're leaving a lot of opportunity on the table. They think the soft skills are great. They're not. It's kind of cringy at best, and the performance opportunities, the revenue, the cost savings, the employee and the customer experience. When you see what can happen through Adept or other training programs, it is something that you run to and you ask, how quickly can we scale this?
Who do you work best with, Eric? If people are listening thinking, wow, this sounds really great, I might want to reach out to him and talk about some of the training programs that we have going on here at our company. Where do you shine, or where are you most effective? What parts of the business? What do you focus on with your Adept training?
Yeah, who is this applied to? Is this for me? Who is it for? So really, it scales really well for any company that has large customer or patient-facing organizations. So typically, I focus with contact centers or chat centers or anything like that. Hospitality, healthcare, hospitals, clinics, and hospitality with hotels, booking services. When you're traveling, something goes wrong, you can go south pretty quickly. Your contact centers, your healthcare, and your hospitality are typically my main three. But it also scales much smaller as well. I'm working with companies who have small dedicated sales groups, and it's not just a matter of customer service. It's how we speak during the sales that just unlock those opportunities. I work best with companies that have front-facing conversations that can be dicey, can be tricky, and that's where the Adepts goes into. And then I also work with process management improvement, employee development, scaling how quickly those things can happen, and saving companies years and years of rework and trying to get their employees lifted up.
Awesome. Okay. So anybody in healthcare or with contact centers, customer service, hospitality, but it sounds like there's a lot of other opportunities there as well. For anybody listening that wants to get in touch with you and learn more about the work you do, where's the best place for them to go?
Definitely reach out to info@yuiconsult.com. The website is yuiconsult.com as well. So it's YUI is YUI, and it stands for you use it. And this quick story behind that is that people would come up to me in the class and say, "This is amazing. I can't believe how well it works." And I would respond by saying, "Yes, It is really cool how well it works, but it only works if you
use it. Right.
And I want people to want to use it so they can see that change in their lives and in the businesses. So, but yeah, reach out on the website, reach out to me on LinkedIn, Eric Nielsen, YUI Consulting,
Right.
YUIconsult.com and info at YUIconsult.com.
YUIconsult.com. Eric, this has been great. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing this with me. Definitely got me thinking about measuring impact, about the guarantee, about really digging in and making sure that you're addressing the right root cause and the issue. We talk about this a lot in the talent development space. Are you a thought leader in the organization, or are you just an order taker? Someone that just takes that order for training and puts something together without really digging in to find out what the root cause is, the issue. And are you providing a truly great solution that people want to run to? Hopefully this is inspiring to our listeners in talent development. Maybe some will reach out to you as well. So Eric, thanks again for being here. And I look forward to keeping in touch and talking again soon.
Thank you very much. Yes, please reach out, and I guarantee it. Definitely a pleasure, Andy. Thank you very much for having me.